Now in this video we'll discuss about project management. I'll give you an overview of project management. What are the various process in project management, process groups in project management, and what are the key project management areas we need to look at. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So you apply your knowledge, skills and use the tools and techniques in the project activity in order to meet the customer requirements. For example, if you are doing a design, you might be using UML, and you would be using your knowledge and skills to come up with the various design documents like sequence diagram, activity diagram, class diagram, things like that. And also you need to create the use cases. You write use cases, use case narratives. So identify the actors, how the actors and the system interact. That is like a sequence diagram. And project management is accomplished through the use of processes of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling and closing. The project manager is the individual responsible for managing the project. So basically the project manager uses the processes of initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling and closing, and uses his skills, knowledge, tools and techniques in order to meet the project requirements. Managing involves identifying requirements, establishing clear and achievable objectives, balancing the competing demands for quality, scope, time and cost, adapting the specifications, plans and approach to different concerns and expectations of the various stakeholders. Project managers talk of a triple constraint. There are three constraints of scope, time and cost. Managing the competing project requirements. Project quality is affected by balancing these three factors. High quality projects deliver the required product or service within the scope, on time and within their budget. The relationship among these factors is that any one of the factors changes, one of the other factor must change. For example, if the scope increases, then there is an impact on the time and budget. You need more time. Also, you need to have work more time means time is money, right? You use the resources, so you need budget. So basically, it changes to one of those. You need to balance out the other things. So this is the triple constraint the managers need to take care of. Also, they manage projects in response to uncertainty. For example, if you take Chennai, a couple of days back there was a big cyclone, right? So many offices have been closed. So how people handle such kind of scenarios? The association, ASSOCHAM, has said that they lost this so many hundreds of crores due to the cyclone, right? So how you respond to uncertainty, how do you reschedule the project? So these are all events which is not in your control, not in the control of the project manager. So you need to have some mechanism to handle that. Project risk is an uncertain event condition. It occurs as a positive or a negative effect on at least one project objective. If something happens, for example, on resource, on time, it could happen. None of the people turn out on a particular day, then it will affect the schedule of the project. Things like that. The project management team has a professional responsibility to stakeholders, including the customers, the performing organization, and the public. they are answerable to them. They need to deliver to the expectations of the stakeholders. The 5 project process groups, they are clear dependencies, the sequence of each project. So they are initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So initiation means defines and authorizes the project or a phase. Usually you come up with a project charter, the senior manager comes up with a project charter and gives it to his boss or director, who then allocates the budget and approves the project. Then the senior manager, what he does is identifies the project manager and gives him the project charter. So the project manager has to understand the project charter and then come up with the project statement of work and project planning. So the planning process refines the objectives, best alternative course of action to attain the objectives, and the scope that the project was undertaken to address. So in the planning, you should have the resource plan, you should have the risk plan, you should have the estimation, you should have the cost plan, you should have the communication plan, you should have the procurement plan, you should have the quality management plan. So all those plan, resource management plan, everything comes in play in the planning process group. Then you have the execution process group, where you execute the plans. You execute the project management plan, which comprises of several sub plans like risk management plan, time management plan, cost management, quality management, communication management, procurement management. So each group, it'll have its own initiation, planning, execution, control, monitoring and control, and then closure. So you need to have those plans in place. So once you have identified those things under the planning group, then you need to create the plan in those. For example, if you are doing time, right, you need to estimate. You're doing an estimation, that is a plan. You are estimating the start date, end date. In resource management, you are allocating the resource. You are trying to say this resource will work from this date to this date. This is the resource management plan. In risk management plan, you are trying to identify the risks in various phases of the project. Similarly, the execution process group integrates people and other to carry out the project management plan so you try to execute the project as per the project management plan. Monitoring and controlling, so you are basically measuring, once it is in the execution stage, you are monitoring the variances, schedule variance, cost variance, effort variance, and then you do a end value. So end value is basically you are calculating the percentage of completion of the project to say whether it's going as per schedule. If not, you are trying to find out how long it's going to take, things like that. So you're basically monitoring and controlling the various deliverables and your triple constraints. Finally, once you have done everything, closure. What are the formalities you need to do to close the project? For example, once you have delivered the project, you need to basically train the customer team and then document all the documents in your project folder, keep all the lessons learned things for future use, and complete all the formalities as per the quality standards for the closure of a project. So this chart gives an idea of the flow. So now we are in the introduction part of the our video lectures. So we go on to discuss strategy, organization, project, estimation, networks, and things like that. So in strategy, what we'll be discussing is basically how a strategy is divided into objectives, from objectives how it is getting into goals, from goals how it gets into programs and projects. Also, we also discuss about project selection criteria. How do you select a project? For example, there are 10 new project requirements. Then the manager has to have a selection criteria based on what he needs to select a project. If it is strategically very important, you need to do that. So you have to give weightage on strategy. You need to give weightage on financial criteria, whether it will give you high value of return, right, and social economical impact and things like that. Based on all these parameters, you come up with a weighted scoring, and then from the weighted scoring you try to select the top projects. Also, you do a weighted scoring because it gives you transparency in the organization. It's not that senior manager is allocating project based on his priority or his favoritism. So they have a set of mechanism in which they try to do the selection of the project and then allocate the project to the particular project manager to execute the project. Also, you can have something called a pearl, oyster, white elephant, things like that, which are based on the technical difficulty of the project, and also something called a bread and butter project. Say, for example, most of the IT organizations have bread and butter projects, which are it doesn't require much technological knowledge, and also it will not give you much profit, but you will be doing in a large number of people. So you will be having 60 to 70% bread and butter projects in many IT organizations, and also some pearl and oyster projects. So pearl is basically a technically feasible project which gives you high return. Oyster is technically very challenging, but if you're executing it, if once you have done it, you get a good value for money. So this is kind of a classification of projects. Basically, white elephant is something which is you have done something and it's neither technically feasible nor it is profitable. Then we get into organization. How your project is getting organized. There is something like projectized organization, functional organization, matrix organization. Projectized organization is something you have a dedicated project team during the duration of the project, will do the project and then move on to do something else. Functional organization is, for example, like if you have 80% finance based project, then you will be allocating mostly people from finance, people who have knowledge of finance, or from your finance department. So they would be working part-time they will be doing their operational work, also they will be doing your project work. So in that way, there is a setback in the sense you will not be able to meet the deadlines because it's a part-time people you are using. Also, there could be a conflict between functional manager and a project manager, because these functional experts will report to a functional manager. You need to coordinate with the functional manager to get the work done from the functional team members. Also, you have a matrix, means combination of functional and projectized team members. You have, for example, in many IT companies, you have the horizontal, something like testing team will have a test functional manager who manage them, but who will give you the people for the project. Also, any other horizontal technology, data warehousing, or any other new technology, big data analytics, things like that. So they have a team, they'll give you the resource, but they'll have some amount of control over the resources. So you need to work with them to get the resource, get the work done. So this is a combination of both. You have team members who are fully dedicated, also who are part-time, who are functional experts. Such a combination is a hybrid kind of projects. So this is how you execute the project, whether you want to have a dedicated full member team. So that is the best thing, but only thing is costly in the sense you need to recruit people or get people dedicated for the duration of the project. but the synergy and other things are very good. In terms of functional projects, you get expertise. In projectized, you will not get much expertise. In functional projects, you will have the experts, but only thing is the delivery and schedule may not be added to strictly. Then next stage is define the project. So in define the project, basically what you'd be doing is understand the scope of work, statement of work. So statement of work normally will have the scope. So what is that the project wants to achieve? What are the objectives it wants to do? What is not in scope? What the project will not deliver? What you will be delivering? For example, you want to have a mobile application. So your objective is to develop a mobile application for a particular function. So that is your scope. Then you will have in the statement of work, you have a start date and an end date, and also a budget, and what are the type of resources you would be using, who are the people who would be engaging, and what are the type of contract, whether you have fixed price or time and material type of contract. So those things. Also, what is the expectations, what are the responsibilities, roles and responsibilities of the project, what are the expectations from the customer side, things like that are highlighted in the stage of the project, defined project. From scope, then you break down into further into, for example, you break it high level into 2 subtasks. From there you break it into sub-level tasks. You break the task into lowest level of activity which can be estimatable. So that is called kind of a work package. You have a project, you may have 100 work packages. So each work package you need to allocate to a particular resource and then monitor the particular work package. So next we discuss about estimation. So estimation is basically, there are 2 types of estimation. You have macro level estimation, micro level estimation. So macro level estimation is something like in cases where the requirements are not clear, you may come up with a macro level estimate. If the requirements are clear, then you break it down into smaller tasks and then you estimate from the bottom up. You break it into smaller tasks, add up all the work packages, then come up with the total estimate of the project. That is the micro estimation. So macro estimation, another way of micro estimation is also like you use the empirical formula. You try to say how many lines of code you basically want to write, and then from there you try to estimate the total effort required. From the effort you come up with the cost based on the charge you are going to make per hour charge for the resources. Then you come with the total budget for the project. Other way is it could be allocation. Somebody has allocated you, let's say 1 crore rupees or 50 lakhs. Then you need to break it down into analysis, design, coding and testing, and then implementation. Then you have to allocate to each of those modules certain percentage. For example, probably coding and testing might take 40% of your efforts. So you have to allocate 40% for coding and testing. You might allocate 20% for design, 10% for analysis, and another 10% for project management and things like that. Then from that allocation you break it down further and then do the allocation. So these are all the two. Within the macro level, there's something called function point estimate is there, where you do data function point and transaction function point. So data function point talks about what you call data sets, data files, what are the input files, what are the output files you have. Based on the files, what are the field length, what are the total size of the file, based on which you have simple, medium, complex. Then you give certain values for those files. Based on the number of files, then you come up with the data function point. Similarly, with the transaction function point, you have the there you talk about what are the input transactions, how many input transactions. So each transaction will have what are the fields it is getting updated in your master files. Once you have entered something, what are the fields which are getting updated in the master file, based on which you give certain weightage to those input transactions, output transactions, query transactions. So add up all those function points, then you have total function points. Let's say you have 100 function points. Then you try to estimate the project. For example, normally you have 4 to 5 function points per week. One person, let's say, can do 1 function point per day. That is the industry norm. Then you have 5 function points per week. If you have 100 function points, so what we are saying is it will take about 20 weeks for one person to do. So you try to allocate to different resources and see how long it's going to take, and then you come up with the scheduling. So that's where the project network comes in. Once you go into the network, basically you identify what are the, for example, analysis. After analysis only you go to the design. After design you go to coding and testing. So this is kind of a dependency. This is like finish to start. Once this finishes only you can start the next. So based on the finish to start, start to start, there are different type of dependencies. Start to start means if this starts, another one also can start simultaneously. The 3 things starts, right? So that is kind of a network diagram you come up, and then you calculate the critical path. So critical path is the shortest duration, shortest path to complete the entire project. Basically, critical path is you don't have any slack time. If somebody is working in a critical path, they cannot afford to delay even 1 hour or 2 hours, because if you delay in a critical path, the entire project gets delayed. So normally you put your good resources in the critical path so that the project doesn't get disturbed. So once, let's say you have a open project, there's a tool called Open Proj, or you can use the MS project. Once you put up all the people, their dependencies and things like that between tasks, then the open project itself will give you the critical path. Or there are ways to do a forward pass, backward pass, then you come up with the critical path, identify the critical path. Then you do about scheduling resources, you allocate resources to the project and also the cost. Next is also managing risk. So basically you identify the risk. So you need to know what are the various phases of the risk. First you have risk identification, you do a risk analysis, then you do a risk monitoring and control. So once you do risk analysis, you identify your top risks. Say for example you do brainstorming or look at projects which have been done in the past. From there you can identify the risks, then give some weightages to the risk based on the probability of occurrence, and once it occurs, what is the impact on the project. Based on the probability and the impact, you come up with the risk priority number. Higher the risk priority number, those risks you need to do a risk mitigation strategy. Means basically if it happens, how do you mitigate the impact, how do you reduce the impact. For example, if tsunami strikes, how do you reduce the impact. Basically in the sea coast, sometimes you have a lot of trees which protect the seashore, so which serves as a natural protection during tsunami time. Also, how do you probably if you have tsunami alerts, you can ask people to vacate earlier, and which reduce the loss of lives. So those sort of things you need to take care in terms of mitigating the risks. So you should have your top risk, you should have a mitigation plan. How do you, once the risk occurs, what is the plan? How do you mitigate the impact of the risk? How do you reduce the impact? For example, in a project, if some resources resigning or leaving, you may have a backup resource who can come in immediately and then take up the work, so that the impact of somebody leaving the project is reduced. Similarly, it could happen like the system goes down in particular center. A team of members can work from another place, which takes care of the critical business functions. So these are all kind of managing the risks. Reducing the project duration is, how do you suppose suddenly the customer wants you to reduce 2 weeks ahead. So either you can put more people into the project and then try to deliver the project, or ask the existing resources to work extra hours. So that would be a better option rather than putting more people. Or another way is making things parallel. For example, previously it might be there's a dependency between tasks, so now you can assume some output and then try to do the things parallelly. Sometimes it might go to rework and things like that, but if it works out fine, that's also another way. Also, what happens is when you make things parallel, the number of critical paths also increase, so you cannot afford to delay even a single path in your project. Also, all your project resources are under severe stress because they cannot afford to have a slack time or relax or take off someday, things like that. So that is a problem in the making things parallel, so that the critical path becomes higher. If you have one critical path, now suddenly you have 3 or 4 critical paths. It's not that critical path is created due to the business functions. It is created because of your constraint on the resources. Then you try to monitor the progress of the project by calculating the end value, looking at schedule variance, looking at effort variance and things like that. And then also from the look at our leadership, how do you build the teams? For example, when you start with a team, how do you motivate the team? How do you build the team? What do you do to make them perform? For example, forming, storming, performing, something like that. So once you form the team, right, there would be storming stage. Storming stage in the sense there would be a lot of fighting between the team members because they're all new. There would be issues which needs to be resolved and things like that. So normally what you do is do some team building activities and things like that. People get to know each other faster, and then they understand, they work in a synergy. Synergy is basically X plus Y is not X plus Y. It's something which is beyond that. Let's say two tennis players, Leander Pace and Mahesh Bhupati, they're the low ranked players, but when they work as a doubles team, their synergy is very good, they perform well. Similarly, team members, they may be average. If they work in synergy, they may be performing better than other teams which may have people who are exceptionally talented or highly technical people, but they may not be able to deliver an objective because there is not synergy in the team. They are always in the storming stage of the project. So once you have formed the team, you need to get the team members into the performing stage as early as possible. So that's why you do 1 week, couple of days, take them out somewhere and then do a team building effort so that they understand each other, they understand they need to work as a team, so that you move them into the performing stage as early as possible. And then also we'll discuss about other quality management, resource management, procurement management. So procurement management is basically talks about contract, what type of project you are executing, what type of contract you want to do, whether it's a time and material or a fixed price. Fixed price basically is 1 year or for this much, let's say for 10 lakh rupees, you do this project and you complete the project, and there would be set of deadlines you need to meet and deliverables. Also, they may have a service level agreements, so you need to comply to those service level agreements. So advantage is they may not insist how many resources you have, or you want to involve in the project. So they give you this money and they ask you to deliver based on the service level agreements. You need to deliver the project as per the contract and the service level agreements. So in fixed price, the risk is with the executing organization. In time and material, the risk is with the customer, because whether you do it or not, they need to pay monthly basis, on a weekly basis. They need to clear your invoices. Then once you get into monitoring, then you complete the project, then you have the audit and closure of the project. So where you do a audit, again there could be in process audit. Suppose you deliver something to the customer, that could be a internal audit where team members reviews the work and then ensures that you deliver the right product to the audit. And closure is basically whether they look at all the deliverables, whether you have delivered as per the customer requirements, whether you have done as per the quality management, whether you have done all the documentation as per CMMI or ISO or any other certifications, or even you have the BS 7799, your security certification, whether you have ensured all IS security norms and policies, procedures are followed. So all those things have been checked in the audit and closure. Also, there could be this audit will be ongoing. They'll be doing an audit just before each of your deadline. For example, design, you are delivering the design documents. The audit team will do the review of all your design documents. Once they give the go ahead, then only you can deliver it to the customer. So like that, organizations have formal audit procedures and quality documents, quality templates, so that you comply to those things and deliver the right product which was of good quality to the customer. So with this, I'll stop the project management